Discover prototypical track and turnouts with the Roadmaster series from Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supply. Proudly made in the United States, Oak Hill's handcrafted turnouts provide unparalleled detail and accuracy, giving your layout museum-quality track work at an affordable price. Whether fully built or in easy-to-assemble kit form, Roadmaster provides all the details of real track. Looking for a custom piece of track work? Oak Hill can help with custom turnouts, diamonds, crossings, and more. Check out all of their offerings on their website, ohrtracksupply.com. If you're looking to bring more realism to your layout industries, look no further than tullymodels.com, the home of Southern Tier Grain Modeler Supply and Steel Mill Modeler Supply. With models to fit steam, transition, and diesel eras, Kevin Tully has you covered with all of the components you'll need to take your grain and steel mills to the next level. Check out the entire catalog at tullymodels.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. It's that time of year where we head to the Midwest, to beautiful St. Louis, for the 2025 St. Louis RPM. And to talk about that is the producer of the St. Louis RPM, Lonnie Bathurst.
Good morning.
And we also have longtime participant in the St. Louis RPM, Scott Thornton.
Hi, Ray. Good to see you and glad to be here.
Always exciting to start thinking about the St. Louis RPM. I attended for the very first time last year, and I had an absolute blast, and I got to see exactly what everybody had been talking about. And Scott, you had been talking about for many years, and I think you were one to encourage me to come out and see it, and I was not at all disappointed.
Well, there's a lot of different RPMs throughout the country, Ray, but I tell you, the St. Louis RPM is my all-time favorite. Lonnie and his crew do a great job of putting together a stellar show. Every single year, it's what I look forward to. It's the first thing on my calendar after that particular year's show. It goes right back on the calendar. Okay, only 300 and so many days until the next show, and I just absolutely love it. It's one of the highlights.
Is that kind of way your calendar works too, Lonnie? Right after the last show ends, the next one begins?
We end at about 7 p.m. on a Saturday. That Monday, I'm contracting for hotels for the next year and have already signed up for the Gateway Convention Center for the next year. After this year's debacle on housing, which I'm sure we'll cover a little bit, I'm covered for 2 years for the Gateway Center in both 26 and 27, and the Doubletree by Hilton as well. I have October and November where I get some time away from thinking about it, and then by December, it's full speed ahead. I hope to be able to slow down in a month for the parts that I do, producing things in advance, and then Jeff Kubler and Dave Rader and others take over to make it happen that day.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we take for granted when we go to any of these type events, including the St. Louis RPM, is just all the planning and logistics that go behind it.
It doesn't seem to ever end. And as any event gets larger, it normally encompasses more features, more details, more people, more things to think about, and then more advanced planning to make sure whatever it is comes off on time and is positive and as perfect as possible.
I know you had some either record or close to record years the last number of times. Wasn't that true?
Yeah, last year we had around 950. We probably pushed a little higher than that, but from ticket count, that's what we'd given out in tickets. So we tried to give everyone who comes through the door one ticket, whether you're an exhibitor or an attendee, so we know how many people are in that facility. The Gateway Convention Center likes us to do that. They want to know how many people are there, how many people are using their food stands, their restrooms, everything about it. So we do that count as accurately as possible. And last year we had at least 950, which is not only the highest number, it tends to grow, I think, every year without exception, a few more. So that was last year.
Well, that kind of lends me to the question of why. Why do people want to attend the St. Louis RPM? What makes the event so special?
I think central location helps. I've not been to an RPM on the West Coast for lots of reasons, but I would go and do what they're doing. I just don't get there. I go to Cocoa Beach. That's a Florida thing in January, and I love that event. And I try always to make Naperville, the original of these. It's a 4-hour drive for me. So I think the central location is key, whether you're 500 miles away or what. And then being outside of the city of St. Louis in Collinsville, you have the amenities of a large metropolitan area, air travel, railroad, interstates, and all of that. But we have the pricing and convenience of a smaller area, which is Collinsville, 11 miles from the Gateway Arch. So I think that's part of it. And I've said this to others, you can't be all things to everyone and be an RPM, but you can certainly try to provide interesting features for lots of different people, because I think RPMers all like different things. Some focus on clinics, some want to see models in various stages of completion, others want to talk to the manufacturers and other kinds of vendors. We get easily a dozen, if not somewhere 15 to 20 historical societies, and people want to come to meet those organizations that they're members of or learn more about. So there's a lot of things there all at one time, all of which draw people for different reasons.
And I'll say that the venue is very comfortable. It's got a lot of amenities around it, like hotels and restaurants, and it has a rural feel. It's on the other side of the river in St. Louis, the east side. So you have easy access to the metro area, but you don't feel like you're in a big city.
Well, Scott, this is an event you mentioned goes on your calendar every year. What is it that you get the most out of the St. Louis RPM?
Well, that's a good question, Ray. And I think I get a lot of things, but I think the number one thing that I get out of RPM is the friendships and the camaraderie and the like-mindedness. RPMers, generally speaking, they tend to lean more toward the prototypical end, but of course, RPMs are welcome for all modelers who cover all the different niches in the hobby. But that's what I enjoy. It's all the people that I've come to know as friends over the years. And beyond that, it's the modeling that's on display is absolutely top notch. Now, it doesn't mean there isn't modeling across the spectrum, because there is, but generally speaking, it's really, really good modeling. And to be honest, I can't even take it all in during a show. Like there's thousands of models on the tables, and when I peruse it, I try and take it in and look at the details and look at the craftsmanship, but I can't take it in. And I always discover post-show, when people put a lot of their photos online, I'm like, gosh, how did I miss that model? Wow, look at that. And, so not only do you get to interact with a lot of different modelers, reestablish friendships, have great conversations, whether in the venue or at the bar or at the restaurants, but you get to see incredible modeling, and that's not even mentioning the vendors. They have some of the most wonderful vendors. A lot of them are state-of-the-art, cutting edge. I know last year we had, what'd we have, Lonnie, like 3 or 4 different custom 3D modeling vendors.
Yes.
And so, you're getting the very best, in my opinion, of models that are being produced for the modeler. And so we have this huge choice, and it's you put all of that together, Ray, and it's a very, very exciting venue for really fulfilling any model railroader's wildest dreams.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's seemingly the RPM in the crowd it draws. And let's talk a little bit about that, because Yeah, there's a multitude of RPMs around, and then there's also a multitude of train shows. Lonnie, why don't you talk a little bit about the difference between, say, your typical train show and what the railroad prototype modelers meet really is about?
I think the train show concept where people have trays of used trains and maybe hobby shops that offer maybe 10 hobby shops offering the same kit or the same rolling stock or whatever, and you get at train show people of all ages. Quite often they are in the earlier stages of the hobby and they'll buy anything, like everything, and they're pushing the stroller or bringing the little guy with them. Um, Costs you $2 or $3 to get in. You can buy a lot of used stuff, that sort of thing. That's your typical train show. They're probably advertised through area newspapers and flyers from the laundromat to the hobby shop. We focus on programs like yours to get to those who are serious about the hobby. Of course, the magazines, everything that goes with that. It's a different group that we're marketing to and a different audience that wants to come. I mean, to pay $35 to get in the door is not the stroller crowd. And to have the exhibitors that come a long way, spend a lot of money, send their executives, maybe they own the business, they are there. It's a different group that those behind the table are different than what you find at your normal train show. Probably one of my biggest battles I fight with my conscience every year is I have to tell a lot of people no that want tables to come in because they're a hobby shop or they've got some stuff for sale and they don't understand the true RPM concept. So we go through that and I politely say, we don't have the space for you. That's not what we do here. I try to keep this as pure as possible. But again, to your earlier question of if you are going to try to appeal to a large number of people of varying interest, you have to have a lot of things at that meet that some would think it's a train show. The vendors we have aren't typically train show vendors. We have manufacturers that would never go to a train show unless it's the Anamori National Meet or Amherst or something like that. So while we try to speak to a varying group of people with different interests, we also try to stay focused on it's about the models and all aspects of modeling. That's probably something we struggle with when we're thinking RPM and dealing with producing this thing. That's a constant issue every month that we prepare for this. The difference in an RPM meet and somebody's train show.
I kind of summarize it as it's the no kidding model railroaders that show up to the RPM, and the guys that are full in, and whether you're full in or want to be full in, it seems like that's the place to be, right, Scott?
It's for the guys who are hopelessly infected with the disease of model railroading. There's no cure.
Yeah.
It's part of their DNA. They can't get rid of it as much as they try. It tends to spread and get more infiltrated into who they are, and it's just the way it is, Ray. Some of us cannot. There's no hope. There's no hope for us.
Well, perhaps it's a support group to say it's okay to be this weird, right? Or this into it, right? It's that kind of support that you get. Like, hey, I'm just like you too, and we get to geek out about this for a few days here in St. Louis.
Well, my wife and my daughter, they always kid me. I come back from the show and they go, "How were your homies?" So it's like, yeah, my homies were great. Again, it's all about the like-mindedness, the camaraderie, and the beauty of a show like an RPM is there is absolutely never a lack for conversation on any railroad topic, and you've never seen so many men who can talk continually for 3 days straight. Most women would be in shock. They'd like, how do those guys get out 20,000 words within an hour? Well, just go to an RPM meet and you'll see that, yes, men do talk. It does happen.
And in that conversation just spills. It's not just at the RPM. It's before, during, after, on the plane ride, on the car ride. It's just, I think that's what makes it so special. You're just immersed in it morning, noon, and night for 3 days or so.
Absolutely. It's when it takes me 6 hours to drive down, and it's actually a very scenic and comfortable drive for me. And I love just the anticipation of all the things that I know that I'm going to talk about with other modelers. And I just get almost giddy because I know, hey, it's like you're 10 years old and you're going into Willy Wonka's candy store. And I mean, just imagine that excitement. That's what we're like going to an RPM.
And I'm sure the after effect, Lonnie, is a lot of folks with the flywheel turning as soon as they leave the doors.
Oh yeah, we get lots of thanks as they roll out the door around 4:30, 5:30 on Saturday, and they've been through the door prize drawing. We get thanks all day long. If I run into people at other events throughout the year, they express their gratitude for this team that worked so hard to put it on. I want to keep working at this until just after the Super Bowl when they're talking to the quarterback that just won the big game. And instead of saying he's going to Disney, he's saying, I'm going to an RPM and it's sitting near me.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's being a homie, Lonnie.
Yeah.
That's
it is.
Yeah.
Well, and if I could jump ahead, Ray, because Lonnie just mentioned it, but the St. Louis RPM is absolutely renowned for their end of the show door prize giveaway. I mean, this thing lasts for at least an hour, right, Lonnie?
That's true. It really does. Yeah.
I mean, where do you go where it takes a full hour to get through all of the prizes that the manufacturers give away? It's just incredible. And I think it's for all the hard work that Lonnie and his team put in, I think that part of the show is kind of the icing on the cake because they get to stand up there and reel off these numbers and watch these modelers come up and be so happy about getting something for nothing. And it is just the icing on the cake at the end of the show.
I think what's also unique is not only how long it is, but how you do it as well, where you kind of get to choose what you win. Talk about that, Lonnie.
Of those 950 tickets we gave away last year, there are two parts to each ticket. One part that person takes and puts in their ID badge, and we know they have, paid to get in. And then the other part goes into this box. We then start drawing those about 4:30 in the afternoon. And of those 950, my guess is we had over 200 prizes, maybe more. And so it takes a while to go through that, but we're doing, a couple of minutes, and people are just coming up, taking what they want. Our approach to that is that as I first start working with the potential exhibitors for the year, I say to all of them, we have low cost of exhibiting here. The table cost and all those things related to that are relatively low. And I can't do anything about travel cost, hotels and airlines and all the things they spend there. But if they don't have to spend a lot of money to be at our event, could they take some of that and put in a nice prize? As it works out, several of the large manufacturers all donate one or two locomotives. Other companies that may not be there, like Walters, sends a box full of stuff. And then everyone there that makes a freight car or a turnout or whatever they do, they all give those gifts. So they're incredible prizes. And as you say, they're free, and take whichever one you want. And people are usually pretty excited to get them. So it's fun. It's just, and it keeps everyone there. We don't have a problem of people leaving in the middle of Saturday afternoon. There's clinics that go on till 4:30. You can deal with the vendors and buy things until 5 o'clock. The historical societies, everyone's there. And so it's an event that goes that whole time up to the end, including the door prize time.
Well, it's funny. I won last year early on, and I went up to look. It was overwhelming because there was so much stuff there. I mean, it's just amazing. And I'm sure I left money on the table by not picking a high dollar prize. But right in front of me was an Aurora Miniatures 50-foot high cube. Of course, that was what I was going to take.
Oh, yeah, that's your.
Yeah, it's amazing, and the generosity of these manufacturers is really an extension of the generosity that's expressed through many of the folks that are in the model railroad industry as well.
The manufacturers are very personable, all of them, and they're great people. They produce excellent products for us all. And it's their opportunity to showcase. I know that I work every year in the Iowa Scaled Engineering booth with Michael Peterson and Nathan Holmes, the owners. We have a grand time. It's not without some stress, and you have to be organized, and it takes work, but it's a lot of fun.
So let's talk about going to the St. Louis RPM and some of the things that you'll need to know. Lonnie, why don't you talk us through? Now, most of us think about this event as Friday and Saturday, but in truth, it really starts on Thursday. Tell us about that.
That's true. I guess because we're talking about going to the event, first things first, I think in all of our conversations, if you simply go to our website, which is www.stlrpm.com, all kinds of entertainments there. We have, I think, most of the 17 previous meets photos of the models on there. Not all of them, but most of them. Clinics are listed. The exhibitors are listed. Information about the learning stations, tab on the hotels and so forth. And that's where I'll stop for a minute. This particular year, every year seems to give us a challenge. I'm sure it does on every event that anyone plans. This year, for us, it was hotels. That Monday after the event, last year when I start working on the next event, I had a call from the DoubleTree by Hilton, and the lady who'd been there only about 2 years. And as she started setting up the contract for 2025, our 18th event, she said, oh my, the lady who was her predecessor had sold the entire hotel room count of 220 beds to a university in Europe. And they were coming over to exchange information and students and knowledge with Southern Illinois University there in Edwardsville, just a few miles away. So our host hotel was booked, lock, stock, and barrel. And so I began to juggle and say, when is the NMRA taking place? When is the Engage National taking place? When are the nice folks from Spring Creek doing their event out in Nebraska? What's going on? Are the Cubs in town playing the Cardinals, taking all the hotels within driving distance? And it turns out we kept it on the same weekend, the last weekend in July, but we had to give up the DoubleTree this year. So then I went driving to Collinsville, I don't know how many times over 2 months, meeting with hotel owners, hotel general managers, the business offices of all these, to take us up to about a dozen to 15 choices of hotels. So we have as many rooms in various blocks with discount prices and guarantees on room availability until sometime early in July, but it's not the DoubleTree. So that was this year's challenge. So when you say, what do you do to prepare for this? First things first, we have so many people that come from such a long distance, overseas and across the U.S., that they need to get a hotel. I would say go to our tab. There are the choices. Some of them have links. All of them have a local 618 area code and a local prefix. So when you call, unless they're overwhelmed with work at the time, you're going to get the person at the front desk, and they'll know the RPM room block and go from there. So that's the first thing I would do. The next thing I would do if I were planning, to your point, Ray, I'd try to come on Thursday. It's the stories never end of these people that get in cars 500 miles away, and they do rail fanning all the way out. And they do that in the St. Louis area, which is fabulous at the central point of the U.S. for all the railroads you can go see in the St. Louis world. And then there's layouts all over, and friends have friends. And so they do everything you can imagine. We start our event, used to be unofficially, by saying, why don't you get your hotel room for Thursday night, go to Bandanas, which is almost walkable from 5 hotels next to the gateway, and just join other modelers in the camaraderie that takes place at a barbecue place. And so they show up around 5:30, hang out there. A lot of them leave there and go over to the DoubleTree, to the lounge, where you might find 4 or 5 dozen modelers in there till 9, 10 o'clock at night on Thursday. So knowing we had so many that were coming to town, including all the exhibitors who need to be there to set up early on Friday morning, we started having layout tours. And so this last year we had north of 200 people visit 2 or 3 layouts on Thursday night. They were different homes And then we did it again on Friday night, the usual night, with different layouts than Thursday. This year on Thursday, we're going to have operating sessions. Not all of that is ironed out, but we do know that a layout tour will not be the same property or same home as an op session. So if you get signed up for an op session because that's your thing, that's not the location of a layout tour. And we think we're going to work through OPSIG and local operators in this St. Louis Metro and Metro East area and use their online sign-up system to be one of the few that operate that particular evening, either Thursday or Friday, at different layouts. We think that for security reasons, we probably won't have that online where you link in through our website to register to be one that operates until a couple of weeks before the event. We're doing it that way because if someone were to sign up in February, say, I want to go to Joe Blow's house and operate, the Pacific Western or something, and then something happens to them and they can't go, they may not remember that they signed up and took one of those precious spots to be an operator. So
Right.
We're holding it off until a couple weeks before that Thursday night so that people know by then, unless something tragic or unusual happens, they're going to be there. They have their hotel, they're set to go. Also, for the layout tours, we don't put that on the website. For security reasons, anybody on the planet could go to that website and see what's going on. So we don't want complete strangers that aren't part of these homies, as you call them, going to somebody's house to scope out the joint. So instead, if you want to go to a layout tour, you have to go to Bandanas, or you have to pick up a map, if you will, at the registration desk at the DoubleTree. Now, about the DoubleTree, even though we're not there this year, those are our buddies and have been almost since the onset of the first RPM. And I talked to them and said, we do a couple of things that involve you. We want to keep our group wanting to use your facility, and I think you want us using your facility. They agreed wholeheartedly. And so the registration forms, or the maps, if you will, for the home layout tours will be on their registration desk, even though you can't get a room there. So you can go there where you normally do, have drinks in the bar or whatever, and pick up that registration on Thursday night for both the layout tours. And I doubt if we'd use that for the op session because we think that will be done digitally and it'll be sold out, if you will, or filled up long before that Thursday. But that's where you'll go. And then also, people go there. It's the nicest property that you can walk to and have a drink and have a snack, an appetizer, whatever, near the Gateway Center. So we're still using it for that. And while I'm on the DoubleTree, we intend to have the RPM Roundup, which we've had for more than a dozen years, which starts at 8:30 on Friday evening, about the time that people are returning from layout tours or op sessions, or they're walking away from the keynote speaker program, and they're still looking for a little more camaraderie. They're not ready to go to their hotel room. So this year we will have the RPM Roundup. RPM is paying for it rather than the DoubleTree. So we'll have free food there from 8:30 to about 10, and then a cash bar. So that's why come early and what's going on early.
Yeah, Scott, the last year, that's the mistake I made. And I've been learning as I go to these events. It is so important. If you want to catch all of what's happening, you need to stay at or near the event. And I stayed a little bit away from it. And boy, I'm just thinking about all I missed in all those after hours conversations and the drinks at the bar because I was in an Uber going cross town.
Yeah, and I learned the same thing early on when I started going to the St. Louis RPM, Ray. So you're not alone. For people who haven't been to an RPM, you have to learn where the modelers are congregating and what's going on. And that's what's so valuable about things like this podcast is Lonnie can get the word out and modelers can get a head start on, hey, I can go to the DoubleTree and I can enjoy a adult beverage and meet new people and talk about model railroading. And that's what's you learn about those things, and the sooner you can, the better.
Absolutely. Lonnie, take us into Friday.
Okay. So On the website, just where you can get all that information we just talked about, Friday also lists on the website and in the program that you get when you register. The morning starts not for the general public, but for the exhibitors at 6 a.m. They come in through the back door, certain loading dock gates, and they come in and start setting up. 7 o'clock, we have the historical societies. And this year, we're going to have our early entry modelers arrive at 8. We used to let them come in a little earlier than that, but the exhibitors have by and large said a lot of the modelers get in there a little too early, might get in the way of all the traffic and clutter of, these four-wheel carts hauling in boxes and boxes of the things for sale or for exhibit. So the vendors and exhibitors have asked us to hold off on the early entry modelers until 8 a.m. But that's part of that early morning program. They'll have their own door to come in, and their room will be blocked off so that they can't get in other rooms. The vendors are on one side and modelers on the other. So then at 9 a.m., the attendees can come in the front door. We will be there this year with the surveys on which hotel you stayed at, because most people that are there before 9 a.m. to enter at 9 slept somewhere in the area. And I usually do an annual hotel survey to find out where they stayed and how many were there. And that's a powerful tool for me to go back to these managers of these properties and say, we had 350 people staying in hotels around here. We want a better room rate and a larger block of rooms. And they pay attention. So that part's important, and that takes place about that time. People come in at 9. We tend to look at the modelers that came in the front door that might only have 2 or 3 models or a handful and say, come up over here to this other line and register so you can get in, not stand there carrying all that stuff, and get in and set it up before the main crowd gets in there. So 9 o'clock, doors are open. Everybody's ready in the main hall, and away we go. 9:30, the clinics start. And while I don't have on the website now the list of clinics, we'll have 21 speakers somewhere along the way each day on various topics, 2 going at the same time. And then the main hall opens at 9, and all the exhibitors and historical societies and models on display will be there for everyone to enjoy. This year, we do have something different. We've worked with the county and the city and the Gateway Center, and we've approached the licensed and approved food truck vendors and gone through that list. We're going to have at least 2, if not 3, different food truck vendors there on Friday and Saturday for noontime, and Friday night till like 6 or 7 before the keynote speaker, to where you don't want to eat the convention food or you don't want to go to the restaurant of your choice. Right there's going to be county's top food vendors ready to sell their tacos and bratwurst and fish and whatever else they have.
Well, that's a great idea, because it's always great to be able to stay on property and not have to leave and come back and find yet another parking spot or all of that. You've taken that challenge right out of it.
That's great, Lonnie. I'm glad to hear that, because having those food vendors is just it's a great option. And I'm really happy that you and your team negotiated for that. Good job.
Dave Lowell has been working with the officials in that area and set it all up and gave us the list. And we said, well, who sells the most? Who's the most popular time after time in that large metro area? And those are the names we picked for variety of food. So we think that's going to be a nice, fun addition.
Now, typically you have 1 or 2 layout displays too. Do you have those?
We don't have them lined up yet, but we're working on that. We do have the space on the floor where we've set that aside, and there's usually about 3 of them that rotate every 3rd year, and we're working on that to secure someone for that. But yeah, we only use a few that just bring fabulous layouts. They're just the detail on the scenery and what they're running for rolling stock is just unbelievable. You can stare at it for hours.
Yeah, in fact, I've seen it's the N-scale Modutrack. Is that right? They've come a number of years in the past, and it's always a pleasure to see their layout as well as the others. And i.e., different scales are represented. It's not always HO. So
that's correct. We also have Ohio sipping and switching that come every few years, and then the Fremo group has become quite good at what they do in putting their stuff together. So whoever's there, it's going to be a treat. And then to to go back to Ray's question, the event itself, the main floor area, closes at 5, and we leave the modeling area open for an hour so that you can focus just on looking at these thousands of models. And there's plenty of chairs in there now to sit around and talk to people that make the models or display them, and other friends, and just talk about things. If you want to stay, it's open. Or if you want to go out to dinner, or the food truck's outside. So that goes on for an hour. We usually close that somewhere around 6. And then at 7:15, and Scott, you're a part of that this year, we'll have our keynote speaker program. The keynote speaker typically highlights the theme of the year, and we usually have one person. It might be an industry expert. Like the year we had coal, we had someone from coal. The year we did moving people, we had someone who had authored and knew quite a bit about union stations. And we think that's Mecca for anybody in the passenger train business, is getting to a union station. So every year we do something different. And this year's theme is technology. And so it's how technology applies to your layout for improving a prototypical operation. And in that, I thought, why not do for the first time a panel of people who either have had layouts or have layouts, or know something about the components of the layout that make it easier to use and the layout better to run and more prototypical to the viewer and the operator of that. So, Ray, as you know, we've asked you to be the moderator of this program. Given what you do in this hobby, who better to serve as moderator for a panel of people that have built layouts and used the latest in technology in some form or fashion. So you'll be our moderator, and we're proud to have you and thankful for that. And then, Scott, you're one of our panelists. So you, along with Bob Perrin and Bill Dornaby and Tony Custer and Nathan Holmes, will all be there to talk about various aspects of what they know about, what they use, what they put into their layouts themselves, and how you can use that and put it in. And it's relatively easy to do. For instance, Bill Dornaby is the first to stand up and say, keep it simple. And although I'm hoping he highlights his small CTC panel and how that interacts with some of the signaling or interlocking towers, whatever, he's going to talk about just keeping it easy. Bob Perrin, on the other end, will say, I've looked at all these things that are provided in the marketplace. I decided to take Arduinos and do a complete signaling system with my bare hands, so to speak. He's built a lot of this stuff and designed it himself. Tony Custer is going to talk about 3 different interlocking towers and 3 different ways to make them work, different types of controls and so forth. Nathan's going to bring to us a whole host of probably products we haven't seen or are fairly new, and those that have been out there on the layouts that bring technology from the circuit board to your layout and let that viewer or operator look at it and think, wow, this is like the real thing. So that part, Friday night, back to what you say, Ray, about what's going on Friday, I'm excited about this first attempt to have a panel with so many knowledgeable people with famous layouts that bring so much to the table.
Well, I'm certainly honored to be chosen as the moderator for this roundtable. And I love the theme because we talk quite often. We are in the golden era of model railroading for a multitude of reasons, and the technology that's available to us as things advance in our world, so that they advance in model railroading. And it's going to be really exciting to get this group of really some of the who's who of model railroading to talk about how they're implementing this technology on their layouts.
Yeah, I know for myself, I plan to talk about something that we covered, Ray, on a previous podcast, which is the theatrical approach to layout design. Just like when you go to the theater and you see sound and lighting, it's my approach that same type of effect should be incorporated into layouts. I think that panel is going to cover such a wide swath of different modeling approaches. It's going to be very interesting for the participants.
Absolutely. And I think it's also going to be interesting for the folks that are watching this roundtable, because it won't just be me asking questions. It'll also be an opportunity for attendees to also ask some questions as well. Is that right, Lonnie?
Yes, it is. And I think there will be interaction between the five panelists and you, as well as the crowd.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. It's going to be a fun time there on Friday night to be able to moderate the roundtable. So looking forward to that. So let's roll into Saturday and what's going on Saturday at the St. Louis RPM.
Okay. We open again at 9 a.m. By Saturday, all the exhibitors sat up on Friday. What we have new on Saturday would be probably some more models for those who attend for only one day, drive in from somewhere fairly close, 1 or 2, 3 hours away. So we'll have some additional models on display and different food trucks and so forth, and then all new clinics. With only 2 clinic rooms to use, we don't repeat clinics, so we'll have a whole selection of new clinics running 2 an hour in different rooms through 4:30 that afternoon. Then at the end of the day, as we talked about already, we'll have the door prize and grand giveaway. And I think that from what my homies tell me is that many of the layouts in the Metro East Illinois side and the St. Louis side of the river are open on Saturday, but that's by invitation from friends to say, come operate my layout or come by and see me or something. But I know a lot of that goes on. People stay another night. I'm surprised at the number of hotel rooms that are reserved for Saturday night as well.
I know I do, Lonnie. Like, I like to relax and not put in all the hours in the car. So I usually book the room Saturday night so I can just get good sleep after a long show and have a comfortable drive the next day. So it works out well.
And with all respect to the awesome events that happen at the St. Louis RPM, some of the best conversations have happened, for me at least, on that Saturday night. After the show's over, everybody's relaxed. Guys like Scott, who had responsibilities throughout the show, are now kicking back a little bit. All that's behind them. And now we can hang out at the DoubleTree at the bar, have a few adult beverages, and just be able to have those relaxed conversations. And boy, the information that's passed along and the things that happen there, and the rail fanning trips and the trip out to the restaurant on Saturday night, it's all part of that big package that makes this entire event so special.
And we can't forget to mention the learning stations as well. I think you're having those this year as well, right, Lonnie?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. One way that we get around the fact that we only have, let's say, 21 clinics, including a keynote speaker, and many of these have nearly 30 clinics that they repeat, a time or two. Having those 21 clinics, we have 5 usually learning stations, which are tables on the main floor that are identified by large banners that say learning station on it, has our emblem of the locomotive and the arch behind it for the St. Louis RPM. And at those, we typically have, as an example, the weathering shop. Butch Eiler and some of his colleagues are typically there, and you can sit there all day for 2 days and talk to them and watch them and learn from them. And quite often, Jeff Otto is one of the learning stations, teach you something about track laying and turnout switches and what they do and how they work. This year, I think we have a new vendor that's going to have a spray gun and talk about his brand of the spraying equipment and air guns and compressors and things and the paints he used. So that kind of thing is usually an eye-opener for people, whether you're a veteran spray painter or new to the hobby. And then we usually vary each year and have a couple of them that might relate to the theme. And this year, if we had more learning station banners, we'd probably have more learning stations because it's an unusually large number of tech-oriented firms that will be there talking about everything from CTC panels to lighting to DCC to whatever is out there in the world of technology. When we invited the exhibitors, vendors this year, we brought to their attention that we're focusing on technology. So bring your firm this year, even if you normally wouldn't come to Central United States or to an RPM, this would be an event that you're going to have a very serious audience that needs to know what cutting edge stuff you're creating.
It's a great opportunity for all those technical nerds in the hobby to come to the Mecca.
Yes, thank you. In that, I think some of the people that present in the clinics feel that they have to tie whatever the theme is that year into their presentation. And that's not the case. We usually try to limit those presenting that tie into the theme to half or maybe less than half. So this year, I think we'll have 9 or 10 presentations that deal with some aspect of technology. And then the others are the typical RPM favorites that you want to see to any RPM you go to, whether it's building a boxcar from scratch or track laying or some structure you've built, or Scott, in the past, you talked about that beautiful bridge that you built, maybe building a locomotive. We have all kinds of topics that you want to see at any RPM you go to. And that makes up the other half. Back to that thing about trying to appeal to all RPMers.
And it's also a great opportunity to, like you mentioned, Bill Darnaby and Tony Custer are going to be part of the keynote, but there's a lot of other well-known modelers that are floating around the RPM. And this is for modelers who are new to the hobby, or even ones that are established but haven't had an opportunity to talk to some of these well-known leaders in the hobby. Now's your opportunity, because from my experience, all these guys are very accessible, love to talk about the hobby, and are approachable. So you can enjoy that aspect as well.
That's very true. When I started going, I went to Naperville first. That's been, 20 years. I was amazed at how anyone will talk to anyone, even though they have their friends they come to see, which makes everyone want to repeat and go back to their RPM. They're glad to talk to new people, make new friends, share ideas. It's amazing how that works.
Well, it's why when I hear you say you may not have enough banners, because in reality you don't, because nearly every table, every stop at the RPM is a learning station if you ask. There's so many folks that are so willing to share. And one of the stories that I carried with me from last year's St. Louis RPM, a gentleman had a small part of a modular layout set up on the display tables. And I started asking questions, and he started disassembling it to answer the question. I was like, no, you don't have to take any. He goes, no. I want to show you how I did this. And that's the spirit that you get with so many folks, whether they have an official banner that says a learning station or not. Ask questions because they love answering them and they love to educate. So many model railroaders do have the heart of a teacher and want to make you a better modeler. And that's really the key point of going to a RPM like this, the ability to learn.
I think that's such a key point, Ray, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because RPMers, I think, are some of the most open and giving individuals, and this is an opportunity to get your questions answered. Maybe some technique or some approach to the hobby that you've wondered about and you're confused, or you just want to expand your knowledge. Across the board, these guys are so open, and there's no secrets. That's the key. There's no secrets. It's like, oh yeah, I'll tell you all my techniques. Well, and Lonnie mentioned Butch Eiler. Look, Butch is, in my opinion, one of the masters of weathering, and you have the opportunity to sit down and say, especially with weathering that can be confusing, you can say, Butch, how in the world do you get this streaking effect? Or how do you chip this car? And he's right there. Goodness gracious. You don't have to, you can have all of your questions answered by the man himself. And that's invaluable.
I couldn't agree more. Butch Eiler is really the example of what every model railroader should be when it comes to sharing that acquired knowledge, and having that enthusiasm behind it is really the key piece of it. He just loves to teach, loves the hobby, and loves that other people love the hobby alongside him.
You mentioned Butch. Last year we had a theme of One for the Ages, the art of weathering your models to your era. And Scott, you provided 4 or 5 of our clinicians from that wonderful book that you authored on weathering and so forth. And all of those people stayed after their clinics, were on the floor talking to people about how they did what they did. And Butch worked with me, and we used the Tangent 86-foot boxcar. They have one model that covered the same railroad basically through 30, 40 years of use. And we bought each of those cars, and Butch then modeled them and weathered them to be about a year or two old in that particular paint scheme over those periods of times. And then he brought it to ours first because that's where he presented. He was the keynote speaker on that. And then he took it to Chicago and to Cocoa Beach and several of the others and shared that information. He's very hardworking at sharing what he knows.
Well, we've gone an hour talking about the St. Louis RPM, and we certainly haven't covered all of the events that this amazing event provides, not only at the Gateway Center, but throughout the St. Louis area and all the fun that we have out there. Definitely head to their website, STLRPM.com, and check that all out. And we'll also provide that link on our website, aroundthelayout.com/162. Lonnie, Scott, I can't wait to get out to St. Louis, see you both, and spend some time with all of our like-minded folks, our homies, as you eloquently added there, Scott, and have a great time in St. Louis.
Thank you, Ray. Really appreciate you having us both on.
Yes, this has been great. It's always fun. I appreciate your support and enjoy the friendship with both of you and the camaraderie we share in the RPM world.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.